justice is the idea that all groups of people should be treated equally and have equal opportunities regardless of race, gender, or economic standing. My chosen topic is why the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico should become states. This is a social justice issue because the people of these territories are not being treated fairly compared to other Americans. So why should the District of Columbia become a state? In recent years, the city of Washington has grown into a major city with over 700,000 people, and they are not being treated fairly. The District of Columbia is, of course, not a state, but policy towards it is inconsistent. Sometimes it's treated like it is a state, sometimes as a territory, and often not fairly. There are several reasons why the city should be made a state, and I think it is probably the most logical candidate for the 51st state. Citizens of DC are citizens of the United States, and they do many things that other Americans do. Just look at their license plate. They actually pay more federal taxes per capita than any other state, even though the other territories don't have certain federal taxes. DC residents also serve in the military alongside other Americans, and they are registered for the draft. Despite this, they have just one non-voting member of the House of Representatives and no one in the Senate, like other territories. One thing that does set them apart from other territories, to be fair, is their 3 electoral votes. DC politicians are undermined by Congress. They can't control their own budget or National Guard, and they receive less than half of the COVID relief of any state at one point. A bill to create a new state called the Douglas Commonwealth passed through the House of Representatives last year, but was stopped in the Senate, and DC residents have already voted in favor of statehood in 2016. This new proposal leaves the government area around the National Mall as a federal district in accordance with the wishes of the Founding Fathers, but it would grant representation to the residents of the city as a new state. So, should Puerto Rico or other territories become a state? Puerto Rico has been part of the United States since 1898, and its residents are American citizens, but it does have different abilities than a state as territory, of course. There are over 3 million people on the island, so more than a lot of states. But like DC, they are only represented by one non-voting member of Congress, and they also cannot vote in presidential elections at all. Puerto Rico does not have to pay as many taxes as states, but they still do pay some, and they do fight in the military like other Americans. They've struggled economically recently, especially with Hurricane Maria, and so if they were a state, they would get the attention they need from the government. They would also get 5 representatives in the House and, of course, 2 senators. They did recently vote in favor of statehood, and a study from the Washington Post found that Americans from the states are likely to support their statehood if they're educated about the topic. And it should be mentioned that Guam, the Northern Marianas Islands, American Samoa, and the U.S. Virgin Islands are also populated American territories, and they are probably just as ignored as Puerto Rico right now, and they deserve their fair representation. But with a population smaller than Iredell County, statehood might not be a practical option for them. Regardless, Puerto Rico would come first before any overseas territory, so it's the best one to address. And so, why do people think they shouldn't become states? What are the arguments against it? Obviously, there are a lot of people against it. Some issues with DC include that it's not financially independent enough, and their economy isn't well rounded, and they can't be trusted to keep the capital safe. And some reasons why people might not want Puerto Rico to become a state is because they could lose some of their unique culture and it could hurt the rest of the country financially. And those are real reasons, but unfortunately, it is mostly political why people want them to not be a state, even though it shouldn't be that way. It is hypocritical that over 4 million Americans have to live without representation in government, especially when they have to pay taxes or get drafted from the military. And it goes against our founding principles as a country, and that's why these territories should become the 51st and 52nd states. And here are my sources.